Like everybody starts out somewheres, and then they do something, something gets done to them, it changes their life. That's called their arc. Where's my arc?
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Xbox Live, and this is Josh from Xbox Live, and today I have a simple question for you. What is a story? I mean, I think we can all agree it's not this.
It's just one fucking thing after another.
In film school, I was taught that a story is this. Someone wants something very badly and is having trouble getting it. This works. It's broad enough to allow for infinite possibilities, and yet it's still specific enough to give you a form, a foundation, some principles to start from. For example, there's always a someone at the center of it. Someone who is motivated by a desire for something that they can't get right away. But this already implies something crucial. This someone might get what they want eventually. So at the start, they don't have what they want, and at the end, they might get what they want. So what changes in between?
Yeah, I had a dream once. I dreamed I was gonna train the greatest hero there ever was. So great, the gods would hang a picture of him in the stars, all across the sky. And people would say, that's Phil's boy. That's right. But dreams are for rookies.
Well, that's where individual writers come in, to show us how the someone will change in order to become ready to receive what they wanted at the start of the story.
Come on, fight back. Come on, you can take this bum. This guy's a pushover, look at him.
You were right all along, Phil. Dreams are for rookies.
No, kid. Giving up is for rookies.
That's Phil's point.
In most stories, by the end, the someone either changes in order to become ready to receive what they desire, or they change what they desire. But in either case, storytelling is change. But not just external change. It's not enough to say that, someone wants to be rich, and then at the end, he's rich. That's just change of circumstance. That's secondary to what really matters. The stories that stick with us are the ones that track internal change. They show us change in someone's worldview, their values, their concept of themselves and their place in the world.
Do you like kids?
On a case-by-case basis.
This is what we call a character arc.
Oh, Annie, I love you.
A character arc is the philosopher's stone of writing. It's the holy grail, the hardest, most elusive, but most rewarding and impactful aspect of storytelling. Most stories don't even try to convey an arc. And to be honest, there are many types of stories that are all the better for it. But if you're aiming for emotional catharsis, if you're aiming for an impactful and epic story, then you need the external journey to serve the purpose of catalyzing an inner journey.
No, I am not gonna lose you again!
Dad, there's no time! It's the only way we can save Dory! I can do this!
You're right.
So the question we should ask is, how do character arcs work? Ultimately, there are as many answers to this question as there are stories. I'm a firm believer that every story has its own logic and demands to be understood on its own terms. There is no one-size-fits-all writing advice. However, there are schemas, frameworks, which can help us find the inner logic of our own stories. If you found this video, you probably know about K.M. Weiland's book, Creating Character Arcs, which is definitely the best book on the topic. In there, she has 3 types of arcs: the positive change arc, the negative change arc, and the flat arc. But these 3 types are based on the direction of the arc. She answers the question, where do arcs go? Do they ascend, do they descend, or neither? Elsewhere on YouTube, you will find people talking about arcs in terms of their content. For example, is this a redemption arc, an altruistic arc, a rags to riches arc? But in this video, I aim to talk more simply and more specifically about how characters change. Not the content of the arc or the direction of it, but the mechanics of it. So without further ado, I offer you my taxonomy of character arcs. Number 1, the Miraculous Arc. The Miraculous Arc is one in which, after a whole film with minimal change, A character suddenly changes all at once. The change usually occurs because in a moment of desperation, the character digs deep and simply finds some hidden reservoir of willpower or wisdom within them. Or sometimes it occurs just for absolutely no reason at all.
Hey, Black Girl Magic!
My favorite example of this is Robert Altman's Popeye, where people tell Popeye throughout the movie that he should eat spinach, but he says no. Then at the end, he's forced to eat spinach, and then this happens. The Miraculous Arc is not a popular one because it's usually the least emotionally rewarding. However, it does work in a comedy, or at least a meta-comedy, where the joke is how bad the writing is. It can work in a dramatic context when the miracle happens early in the story and actually works as the inciting incident that sets the whole story in motion, with the rest of the script showing the consequences of this sudden change. I would categorize Kung Fu Panda as a satisfying version of a Miraculous Arc. After a whole film of trying and failing to change and become someone else, Poe suddenly realizes that all he has to do is accept himself as he is. I think it works so well here because it's actually ironic. As soon as he accepts himself as he is, he changes and becomes a superhero. Number 2, the Gradient Arc. The Gradient Arc is the opposite of the Miraculous Arc. The Gradient Arc occurs slowly, over the course of many sequences, sometimes over the course of several films.
Let him go, you filth.
Michael Corleone is probably the best example of this. He changes slowly from an all-American good boy who just wants to start his own family to a ruthless boss of the mafia, willing to kill even his own family. How does he get there? Not with one big decision, but with many decisions, each escalating, each bringing him closer and closer to the top. If you were to compare the character from the beginning to the character at the end, they are dramatically different. But there are very few massive leaps in between. It's hard to single out one or even two moments where this change occurs. Number 3, the Turning Point Arc. The Turning Point Arc lands somewhere between the previous two types. It's similar to the Miraculous Arc, in the sense that the majority of the change occurs in a single moment, where the protagonist comes to a crossroads in their life and makes a decision one way or another. Sometimes the character is forced to make a decision. Other times they simply come to an internal barrier and realize that they cannot continue down whatever path they're on, and they choose a new one. However, it also has something in common with the Gradient Arc, because this choice is always something that's adequately set up earlier in the film. It's something that the character has been trying to decide for themselves, something they've been struggling with internally or in conversation with other characters, or it's something that the character has been warming up to for a long time. Characters in turning point arcs will often flip-flop between two ways of being before finally, in a heated moment, committing to one way or another. This kind of arc is extremely compelling because as audiences, there's probably nothing more dramatically interesting than watching a character make decisions. And this approach makes entire films, or even entire franchises, revolve around single scenes with devastating, galaxy-changing consequences. Number 4, the relationship arc. The relationship arc is maybe the simplest and most basic of all the types. In a sense, all of the other arcs are variations on this one, but you'll see this type in its stripped-down, bare form more often in dramas and in romantic comedies. These are two genres where the plots often revolve around relationships between two or more characters. A relationship arc is one where the evolving relationship between characters who are diametrically opposed to each other at the beginning of the film is itself the catalyst for a change in the worldview of one or both of the characters. Perhaps as they grow closer together, one of the characters learns to be more like the other, or maybe the very act of the characters letting their walls down and having a relationship at all is where the change resides. Or maybe it's even simpler than that. Maybe their arcs reside in accepting one another for who they are.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
My favorite example of this is Rain Man, where the engine that causes the change in the protagonist is the time he spends with his long-lost brother, Dustin Hoffman. Their slowly growing friendship is what precipitates Tom Cruise's transformation from a materialistic asshole who simply wants his inheritance into a man who puts family first. Dustin Hoffman's character doesn't have to tell Tom Cruise that he should change his values, but rather it's the relationship itself, the love that this odd pair find for each other, that teaches Tom Cruise this lesson organically. Number 5, the didactic arc. The didactic arc is the opposite of the relationship arc, in the sense that here, change is catalyzed not by slowly evolving relationship between two characters which teaches your protagonist a lesson organically, but by the revelation of information which teaches your protagonist a lesson inorganically, so to speak. The classic example of this is A Christmas Carol, but much of the same can be said of It's a Wonderful Life. In both examples, a supernatural power presents itself to the protagonist, showing them things, the past, the present, the future, an alternate timeline, all in an effort to explain to the protagonist why they're wrong about something and how they should change. And then, enlightened by this new information, they change. I call this didactic because it has the same dramatic power as a lecture or a video essay, which is to say, not much. Someone simply says, "Here, look at this thing which proves my point," or "Let me talk at you and tell you why you're wrong and I'm right." This type of arc is not particularly impactful or satisfying for a number of reasons, but mainly because it doesn't effectively use the events in the story itself as the catalyst for these lessons. Number 6, the U-turn arc. Also known as the Be Careful What You Wish For arc, a U-turn arc is when a character actually does manage to get what they want without changing. If the story were to end here, it would be a flat arc, but the story doesn't end there. What happens after this point is that the characters find that the thing they wanted does not complete them like they thought it would. They find themselves still longing for something else. My favorite example of this is actually Jack from Lost. Even diehard Lost fans find Jack insufferable, easily the worst character in the show, but to me, Jack has one of the most moving arcs in all of fiction. For the first half of the show, Jack wants one thing only: to get off the island. The way he thinks he'll achieve this is by sheer willpower, by being committed, by never letting go. Jack is a doctor, a rationalist. He is inflexible in his worldview and inflexible in his goals. When he wants something, he will bulldoze any obstacle to get it. He's often contrasted with John Locke, a man who doesn't want to leave the island at all, a man who can listen to the earth, a man who believes in destiny.
That's why you and I don't see eye to eye sometimes, Jack. Because you're a man of science.
Yeah. What does that make you?
Me? Well, I'm a man of faith.
There are moments when Jack's inflexibility begins to crack, when he starts to learn how to let go. But usually he just snaps right back to where he was. He is one of the most stubborn characters in all of fiction, and he stays that way for 3 seasons. It's only after Jack actually gets what he wants that he starts to change. He leaves the island, and yet there's still a lack within him. He is haunted by Locke's ideas about destiny.
We have to go back, Kate.
And when presented with an opportunity to go back to the island, he jumps at it. And this is where Jack finally begins to change. First, his worldview changes.
What if you're wrong?
I'm not.
He finds something new to believe in: destiny. But he believes in destiny the same way he disbelieved in it before, that is to say, zealously. He takes a massive risk to prove that he's right. And once again, gets what he wants, and once again, regrets it. It's really only in the final season that Jack realizes that his flaw wasn't the content of his worldview, but the form of it. His problem wasn't his disbelief in destiny, it was his inflexibility. That is to say, his inability to surrender his willpower.
You have no idea how hard it is for me to sit back and listen to other people tell me what I should do. But I think maybe that's the point.
It's Jack's ability to surrender his willpower to that of the island that eventually saves them all. It's ironic that it's Jack, the most skeptical of everyone, who ends up being the protector of the island's spirit, something that Jack at the beginning of the series would never have even believed in, let alone given his life to. He transforms radically from an inflexible rock into a flowing river. from a rationalist into a spiritual warrior, and the only thing that the writers needed to do to facilitate this enormous change was to give him exactly what he wanted. Listen, there are precious few stories out there that belong strictly to just one of these categories and not another. In the messy world of storytelling, characters change in multiple ways. Moreover, every story is its own tacit theory on storytelling. If you look at older films that were made before there were video essays like this, and before books like Creating Character Arcs or Save the Cat were written, they were far more idiosyncratic in their approach to character arcs. Although I agree that character arcs are the point of good storytelling, I also think we're in danger of becoming too academic in our approach, too attached to these formulas, these types, too eager to do things the quote-unquote right way. I would rather push you to explore, to treat each story you write as a genuine exploration into the collective unconscious. We can't keep consulting roadmaps if we are exploring. Now, I make no claims that these 6 categories are exhaustive, or that you should just stick to one of them. So when writing your own story, do not try to pigeonhole yourself. Take a little from column A, a little from column B, but above all, listen to your characters. Learn what they need. Let your story evolve organically. Be a river, not a rock. And above all, whatever you do, please, for the love of God, do not do this.
We believe in our beliefs as much as they believe in theirs.
Thank you everyone for watching this video. And before you go, I have a podcast. It's called Haven't Seen It, where we discuss films we haven't seen. We bring our unique knowledge of film history, film theory, philosophy, and tennis to bear on new and old films. We post weekly on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now here on YouTube. So check out the link in the description below, and may the blessings of Akatosh be upon you, and have a wonderful day.